Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Wendel, and this is Lead Well MD, a podcast that explores how leaders can transform healthcare through emotionally intelligent, effective clinician leadership. So today we're further exploring the human development journey of leadership in healthcare, and I'm very excited to have someone join me that I have followed and admired and read. Dr. Richard Winters, who is the Director of Leadership Development for the Mayo Clinic Care Network, is here with me. Richard, thank you for being here.
Yeah. Hey, Ashley. Thank you for having me.
Hey, you bet. So you're a practicing emergency medicine physician, right, at Mayo, and it's where you did your training as well, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Medical school here and then residency actually in California. And so
Oh, we're in California.
in Fresno, and I was in
Yeah.
California for 25 years.
Oh,
And
no
I
kidding.
just returned to Mayo 2015.
Okay. All right. So, on top of being the Director of Leadership Development, you're also an ICF-certified coach, right? So you coach leaders internal, which I find fascinating. I love that aspect of the work that you do. And you also have an executive MBA. I mean, you're just, you do all kinds of things, sounds like, right? And the one thing that I love is that you're the author of You're the Leader, Now What? This is a great book. It's a practical book. I've used it for a few years. I've actually handed it down to seminars because it is so useful and practical. The tips are great. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I think that you're rooted in clinical experience, but you also have the leadership development, the human development side. And I think that your voice is really needed right now. People are carrying a lot. So let's just kind of jump in.
Sounds good.
Okay. But actually, before we do, I would like to know a little bit more just about you. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get into medicine? And I think I'm a coach.
Yeah, so I grew up in suburbs of Chicago.
Okay.
And when I said I wanted to be a doctor, my parents very appropriately started laughing.
Okay.
I was kind of a skateboard punk kind of kid.
Oh, nice.
And, didn't do really good in high school. And then in college, really found that this may be something I wanted to do.
Okay.
At that time, my grandmother had Lou Gehrig's disease. And so we were taking care of her
Okay.
at home. And so like that plus
Wow.
some of these experiences came together.
Yeah.
And that's how I decided. And then went to
Wow.
Mayo for medical school. And I mean, all these things, as you said, like the all the training and stuff is like, there's some things going on here I feel like I should know some more about.
Right.
That's what led to the MBA and
Yeah.
coaching stuff and those sorts of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Well, not everybody does that, right? It's pretty impressive when you do. I mean, especially the internal coaching piece. How did you get onto that?
Yeah, so I was in California and I
Mhm.
was chair of a department and then managing partner of a physician group.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm interacting with hospital leaders and
Right.
like they have this whole different language. And so
Yeah.
so that's when I did the MBA. And as part of the MBA program, there was a coaching module. And so
Mhm.
Robert Hicks, and I was at UT Dallas, and it was, I think at
Mhm.
that time, one of the first really kind of organizational dev coaching focused
Uh-huh.
programs.
Yeah.
And when I started, I heard about coaching and I thought, geez, they're just going to ask about feelings and like dream catchers and things like that. And it's funny because I was just thinking about like, I attended my first ICF conference and there were like dream catchers. And so that kind of part fit. But what I found was like a way of thinking about how I think and like how to be effective.
Yeah.
And that was really helping just not only as I was coaching others, but even for myself to think about how to be effective.
Right.
And the cool thing then was in coaching others, like this normalization that I started to feel about a lot of the things that I was feeling, and then helping
Yeah.
them, and
Yeah.
it just all fed together. It was good.
Wow. Wow. And when did you officially kind of start that coaching internally? Been a
28. So that
while?
was in 2010, and that was
Okay.
when I was in California,
Mm-hmm.
and so then it was really mostly, I mean, all of them external coaching, and so
Yeah.
just healthcare leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love when people's trajectories are a little bit roundabout. I'm sure your parents are happy now,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
right?
But I
You're
think
not
that's a
laughing.
point. I think from a coaching perspective is that and so I work with a lot of residents and medical students and stuff like that. And
Nice.
a lot of times they come to you and they're like, so, what should I do? How should I be? And if I use my own CV as a blueprint for them, it doesn't work. And so this is like where the coaching is helpful is like, what is it that you want to be doing and how,
Right.
because we all just kind of circle in different ways and
Yeah.
eventually get to where we're at.
Yeah, yeah. But I love that your pounce shows them that maybe it's not always just linear, right? Goes in
No,
different ways and you
definitely
can
not
get there.
linear. Yeah.
No, for sure. I love that though. So I want to talk a little bit about your book, just because I have found it so useful and so many people who I've worked with have found it so useful. So what was it at the time where you decided, where you said, I got to write this book? This book has to exist. What was going on for you that you found that?
So there's kind of equal parts of one is the pain that I was feeling as a leader. And so, as an example, and I open the book with this because this is very real, which is being in these meetings and you had this sense that people wanted to hear what you had to say, but then they weren't listening to what you were saying.
Yeah.
And that happens everywhere. I mean, this
Mhm.
is kind of one of these things.
Yeah.
And then at that time feeling like, geez, I didn't say it right. How could, and then kind of beating myself up for it. And so,
Right.
and
Right.
then from a coaching perspective,
Mhm.
hearing that from others, like that these experiences that they were having. And so there's that. And then
Mhm.
now as someone who's like developing leaders,
Mhm.
seeing that in my coaching conversations, many of the leaders that I work with they didn't have these sorts of frameworks in their mind. Like they didn't
Yeah.
know how to do this. They didn't know
Yeah.
how to
Yeah.
lead when everyone
Yeah.
disagrees. They didn't know how really to have these one-to-one conversations from a
Mhm.
coaching perspective as opposed to
Mhm.
from a kind of a colleague to colleague or kind of an expert perspective. And so,
Right.
yeah, and so I just thought, geez, maybe I should write this stuff down, and that's where it came from.
And that's where it came from. I think that a lot of the folks that I've worked with too, they find themselves in those rooms. They don't have the language to be able to share and communicate in that environment, and that's really it can be very affecting to people because they're not used to not having ease with certain things. Right? It's not comfortable to not know how to do things. Kind of on that note, if you're working with clinicians who are first stepping into leadership, what do they typically find most surprising or even destabilizing when they enter into official leadership capacity?
I think this is very common in healthcare. It's this movement
Yeah.
from being expert to this role then where actually your expertise might get in the way. And so that's
Yeah.
to being more of a coach or a facilitator
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not having really an idea of how to do that. And that's
Right.
just so common. And so they get into these roles and they're still like, and the great thing from a physician is like we go see a patient and, talk to a patient for 5, 10 minutes and then we write orders.
Right.
And so as we're in meetings, we're like, oh, I hear what you have to say. And then writing an order, like
Yep.
based on what I think. And then
Right.
realizing, you know what, this isn't working out as I planned and you're missing
Right.
out on stuff. And it's very, very common.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you on that one. And that's something that I hear a lot all the time. And it's I think one of the hardest mindset shifts for people to make because it is really it's a letting go of the way that you've always thought of yourself as expert. You have to be an expert in the room to be successful in medicine, obviously, entirely appropriate in clinical practice. But when you put on a different hat and you put on a leadership hat where you have to, make other people smarter in the room,
Right.
you have to take that step back. It's a really tough place for people to get to, I think.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
mhm.
it's not necessarily always, I think a lot of times people know that there's this deficit, like, I don't know how to do this. And so there's
Yeah,
that too. There's both
right,
this, how do I think this way? And then how do I actually do it this way that need to
right.
come together?
Right, right, right. I see that a lot actually in the book. A lot of what you write is so practical. Is that really what you thought the need was? That people needed to actually have tools to say, how do I actually do this?
Yeah. And I think there's the concept, and this came from high fits, like this technical versus adaptive challenges.
Mm.
And when I'm coaching, thinking about that, and I
Mhm.
really love to be in this adaptive space where I'm helping people think about what they think and how to reconcile these
Yeah,
sorts of differences. And that's really, I think, a helpful thing. But
right.
then what I was finding in conversations is that actually there was this huge technical gap that had
Mm.
me then like had these conversations bogged down in tech, like how do I actually do this?
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
where this concept of the book came forward.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. Do you still use it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, in my mind, still writing, like, new stuff, like, and things that
Good.
yeah.
Yeah. Part two, I hope. Are you
Yep.
working on another one?
I deliver a lot of courses and things like
Mhm.
that,
Mhm.
and yeah, I think there'll be a book there. There's so many things that are changing right now,
That's right.
yeah, with AI and stuff that I'm
Yeah.
really also jazzed on and thinking about how to put all this together. Yeah.
Interesting. And tell me a little bit more about that, can you? Because
Oh,
that's a big
sure.
thing right now. Everybody's talking about that, and I'm still formulating in my own mind about how AI is going to affect this kind of work. leadership development, human development? Where does it have a role? What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's evolving. I mean, so
Yeah,
AI is here, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it, and
yeah.
and it's hard to even conceptualize how it's going to change what we do. And I've spent actually, it's interesting, like the past week, really get into it. I used to be a coder, and so now I'm getting into
Oh,
like, how do I look at AI from the perspective of a project manager, not someone who's having to
sure.
code things and like get things done.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing in there like how helpful it can be to
Hmm.
have sort of coaching conversations. And so
Okay. Okay.
there's limitations there,
Yeah.
right? There's
Yeah.
limitations there.
Yeah.
But I think that and we're seeing this, there's apps out there that are coaching, and I think that and I'm seeing that a lot of people like that, and then it's been helpful for them. And so
Hmm.
that's a truth. I mean, I think I would hold that, and I think
Hmm.
that can be very helpful.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, there's this thing about being a person, talking with another person,
Hmm.
who can have
Hmm.
this perspective,
Hmm.
um, and who has been in the arena and
Yes.
understands the arena,
Yep.
and can kind of go there with not only what's typed into a chat, but the
Yep.
nonverbals that are said, and who
Yes.
can sense these other things that are going on, that I think is
Yes.
also helpful. And so,
Yeah.
moving forward, how do we put this together? I think it's nice. There's lots of how do we scale coaching has always
Mm-hmm.
been a question,
Hmm.
and it's going to
Correct.
be
Yes.
multifaceted, right? It's how we're
Yeah.
developing leaders to have these conversations. It's the
Yeah.
AI that we're going to use, the
Right.
professional coaches, and it's probably
Mm-hmm.
going to be a bit of all
Mm-hmm.
those.
Mm-hmm. Developing coaches within the organization. How do you,
So much,
right? How do you teach leaders to be coaches to their people, can then cascade and so on, right?
so much. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about nuance and lived experience that I'm still struggling with AI. You know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it is a struggle. It is a
Yeah.
struggle.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me ask you this. So if you had a clinician who is new to leadership and they picked up this book and they're overwhelmed and they're unsure about the role, what's the key thing you'd want them to take away from it?
I think that how normal the struggle is.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I think that's it. I think it can be very isolating. It is very isolating to be a leader and to be in these
Yeah.
situations
Yeah.
where where people are no longer colleagues. In some
Mhm.
cases, you're looked at as the boss,
Yes.
and I think that's isolating. And even if they are colleagues,
Mhm.
to have individuals who disagree, and sort of the
Mhm.
networks that form around that as we're trying to change things and improve things, it
Right.
can make us feel like we're not approaching things right, that maybe there's something wrong with us. And
Right.
my hope is that this is so normal, and that people understand that,
Yeah.
and that while some of the I guess the emotions and stuff may stay there, that there are some frameworks that can be very helpful to move things through. And so, understanding how to coach, understanding how to
Mhm.
facilitate, how to bring people,
Mhm.
kind of polarities together. Like, these are all different sorts of tactics and techniques that can blend with the individual, and
Yeah.
that they can use.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I've coached a lot of leaders who struggle with that transition from being a peer
Yeah.
colleague to then being in a role where now they're in charge of their colleagues, and it's an awkward place for them a lot of times until they grow a comfort level with it,
Yep.
and an authenticity in their own leadership around it.
Yeah. And for some, I mean, there's an agility. There's this agility that's needed. And so for some,
Yeah.
it's quite natural to know what to do, and to kind of like command and control,
Mhm.
and that sort of thing,
Mhm.
which can be very helpful. It can
It's
be very
certain
helpful.
things.
And then
Mhm.
there are some individuals who are very natural at like facilitating and just wanting to
Right.
know what everyone thinks and bringing that all together. And
Mhm.
that can be very helpful. And it's
Mhm.
this agility to be able to bounce between these
Yes.
that needs to be really developed.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. We talk a lot when I'm working in the whole leaders coach capacity, but
Yep.
that spectrum of very directive to very non-directive, and where do I fall in that line? And it depends on where and whatever process and with who I'm talking to. Leaders struggle with that often. So I think helping them figure out that it's okay and it's appropriate when you have to be directive sometimes. And then there are times where you really do want to set back it. I think for me, it's always just their first inclination is to be directive. So if we can move the needle a little bit to get them to be able to pull back more, then that's a good thing. I don't know if you find that in your coaching work.
I do. I do. And so then, yeah, I mean, what's the risk of being directive? And there are risks.
Yeah, there are.
And yeah, the
Yeah.
risks are you decrease the autonomy of those that you're working with.
Yeah.
They start to see you as someone who doesn't know and have the big picture, has big blind spots,
Mhm.
and all
Mhm.
that it actually starts to become true if we overplay the directive hand.
That's for sure. Yeah, yeah. They don't feel included, their voice isn't heard, psychological safety dips,
Right. Right.
all kinds of good stuff. Well, I want to circle back just for a second to that thing we were talking about a second ago about the needing to have all the answers. Because again, that is a really hard one for people to let go of. Why is it so important, do you think, that we reframe that in this field where expertise and certainty are so valued? Why is it so important that we reframe that for leaders? Yeah.
What really helps me is,
Mm.
and I'll just talk about like the Cynefin framework was really like helpful
Mm.
for me to think about this. And so,
Yeah.
just I'll say like for those who don't know, like,
Yeah.
so what kind of a decision are we making? This is a
Yeah.
good question. And so
Yeah.
there are some decisions that are very clear where we just like we all agree this is what we do. When a patient comes in with this is what we do. When this
Right.
sort of thing happens, those aren't difficult. Those aren't leadership things.
Right.
Then there are things that require expertise, and this is a place that in healthcare that where we're at. So a patient comes
Mhm.
in with this, and if they have a broken bone, I'm going to call the orthopedics. They're an expert. I'm going to call the cardiologist for this patient who's having a heart problem. Like
Yep.
that's very common.
Yep.
Um, but many of the decisions in leadership are not based on that. What's
Yeah.
based on are actually situations where we don't actually all agree that where the things that we should consider we don't agree upon, the possible outcomes we don't agree upon, like how we should
Right.
like, and that is what makes up like how do we staff?
Mhm.
That's difficult.
Mhm.
That's difficult. What is our strategy moving forward? That's
Yeah.
difficult. How do we pay ourselves? That's difficult. How do we like all these sorts of things? You can't be an expert of that because it is a place of unknown unknowns. And
Yep.
so, how do
Right.
you bring people together? And in fact,
Right.
knowing the answer gets in your way in that sort of a situation.
Yes. Tell me more about that.
Well, I think I maybe approach this from the other way, how freeing it could be to be approaching those situations and understand that actually you don't need to know the answer.
Uh-huh.
That knowing the answer is going to get in the way.
Right.
Because I think that for the new leader, that is like, oh my gosh, this problem. I have
Yes.
to try to figure out how we're going to schedule this, and people all
Yes.
disagree, and I'm supposed to have the answer. Actually,
Yeah.
no, that's not. What you want to be doing is trying to be bringing together all these different perspectives and then
Right.
coming up with the answer, kind of
Right.
collectively co-creating it.
Right.
Sometimes you need to be more direct. Sometimes you need to be more facilitative, but to understand that that actually is the better approach because there can be no experts, and if
Yeah.
you're trying to make decisions as an expert, you're actually making decisions around big blind spots that you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think it can be freeing. It can take a
Yeah.
lot of the pressure off your shoulders.
Yeah.
But then the question is how to do that. And that's where understanding how to coach comes in, how to
Mhm. Mhm.
facilitate.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, 2 things come to mind as I listen to you. I mean, one, I've heard that many times from leaders that feel that the weight coming off a little bit when they recognize they don't have to have the answer to every single issue all the time, and that it's not their job, and that does get in the way. I see that all the time, and I like to call it's like the difference between being a fixer and a facilitator and shifting their head from being that drop-in expert, fix the situation, go, but to more of that facilitative role. How do I help others come to the same answer? Might be even be a better answer than the one I would have come up with.
And I'm just thinking about like,
Mm.
so I can lead emergency physicians, but
Yeah,
as you gain that skill, like I can go in with a group of neurosurgeons and help them have their thorniest problems. Like
yeah,
I'm not a neurosurgeon. I don't know how to operate on the things. I have some understanding of the field in some ways, but there's many
right.
things that I don't. And it's just to understand that as you have these leadership skills, your ability to go into places that are adjacent, those
Yeah,
skills are practical everywhere.
yeah, yeah. So, what do you spend most of your time coaching leaders about? Do you think are there particular themes that tend to come up?
Yeah. And so a lot of my work is, and so I do independent, like or one to
Mhm.
one kind of coaching with
Right.
CEOs and chairs and VPs and things like
Hmm.
that. A lot of my time is spent with teams and with organizations
Right.
around their strategies
Okay. Great.
and particularly helping them solve things that have been difficult for them.
Hmm.
And so an organization is establishing the strategy. How do we make sure that everyone on down is able to execute on the strategy and get things done? And so getting into
Yeah.
those sorts of situations. How does an executive team come together? How do we do shift huddles when no one wants to do shift huddles? And so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
coaching, but a lot of it is kind of facilitating around groups
Hmm.
and that level, like
Hmm.
coaching from that perspective.
Got it.
And so the problems that individuals, organizations have, it's really the same. And so it's culture. How do we
Yeah.
improve the culture of this group that I'm leading, of our organization?
Right.
How do we? Everyone has a problem with retaining talent and
Yes.
recruiting talent.
Yes.
Everyone
Yes.
internationally
Agreed.
doesn't. Yeah, everyone does. And so then how do we do that? That's an issue.
Right.
How do we deal with change? Because
Right.
that's just what healthcare is.
Right.
How do we deal with
Awesome.
things like AI? How do we? And so
Hmm.
those are the things. It's just and
Hmm.
the nice thing is that as the coaching, facilitative, reflex, muscle kind of
Hmm.
it's helpful for all those sorts of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's your role when you go into those rooms? How do you see your role exactly?
Yeah, and so that's for the book. That's the real forward. And so just kind of so for any challenge, this is like this comes from coaching.
Right.
Grow, right?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Goal, what's
Mhm.
the reality? What are your
Yeah.
options? And
Good
then
model.
way forward. And so I
Yeah.
thought, geez, I like that. And so how do I apply this to because I didn't really learn how to facilitate groups, but how could I apply this?
Yes.
And so then I thought, geez, we don't generally start with the goal. It tends to be
Mhm.
something bigger, and then the goals tend to arrive. And so that's where it was
Mhm.
like row forward. R
Ah, that's
is yeah. So
interesting.
R is shared reality, and then O is options, and this way forward, it really is grow.
Yeah.
But the way to start out with is not a goal, but a question. And
Yeah.
so the question is, how
Yeah.
do we do this thing that we're wanting to do?
Mhm.
This thing like moving forward. How do we
Mhm.
do it? And wanting to make sure that it's something that we have like that we have can have an effect on. And
Right.
so it
Right.
just starts with that. And so any of these
Mhm.
situations, it really goes with that. So how do we create a cohesive strategy? That's a good question. So what's the shared reality around this? How do we better communicate? How do
Right.
we best take care of patients because our
Yeah.
panel is overwhelmed? Like how do we best schedule? It starts
Right.
out with this kind of coaching question.
Mhm.
Then shared reality, the R, is
Right.
what are the different perspectives? And
Right.
so those are both
Yep.
within your work group and outside your work group and expanding that.
What are the obstacles? What are the leverage points?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so that's it. And then what are the options? So
Yeah.
based on all these kind of different perspectives, what are some options that we can come up with?
Yeah.
And then what are these options that we're going to choose and then have a way forward?
Beautiful. Yep.
And then OKRs, objectives, key results, tends to be the thing is
Right, right, right.
feeds
It's a
back.
great framework, really. I mean, it's a great framework for a coaching conversation with an individual. It's a great framework for with a group. Absolutely. So your job is really to facilitate it, that you're going in there and you're asking these questions and guiding them in their responses.
Yeah. And I've found that so like in business school, we study the case studies of others. And
Yeah.
I find that in working, at least in healthcare, it's better for them to be working on their own cases.
Uh-huh.
And so that's oftentimes these sorts of scenarios is going in
Yeah.
and just like introducing some stuff,
Yeah.
a little information, like how do we decide? This is
Right.
Ken So how does
Yeah.
this come up for you?
Yeah.
And showing them how to develop shared
Mhm.
reality. These are just some of the
Mhm.
techniques. How do we maintain psychological safety?
Yes. Yeah. So it's a little bit of education, teaching, plus facilitating. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. What have you seen as some of the outcomes from this?
I think the big thing is that as you get groups of people together who are working on these certain problems, like they come together
Uh-huh.
and stuff that used to be difficult, like, how do I say this? People are happy, like they enjoy this. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, it's they're getting work done. And so
Mhm.
they're actually now coming together around this thing that there was a lot of polarity around, that they're coming up with
Yeah.
some options and ideas and what to do.
Right.
And then I think a key thing is then as they leave, and this is one of the things I say is one of the riskiest times of every decision is when you leave the room.
Yes.
Go back to your lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that was great. We had this. Did we do anything? No.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So like actually getting stuff done. And
Yeah.
so creating these structures for them to be able to keep track of each other, to
Uh-huh.
assign someone who can nurture the project or the thing that they're
Right.
wanting to do and then
Right.
actually
Accountability is
getting
huge.
results. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's part of the W, right? They say measure commitment to what everybody's agreeing on and
Yep.
then make sure we have a pathway forward and then sticking to it and,
Yep.
and people holding each other accountable for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and from the coaching perspective, so what happens if this goes wrong? I mean, you're gonna have some
Mhm.
fires that are gonna come up, so what are you
Oh
gonna
gosh,
do?
yeah. Mhm.
You're gonna need to delegate to someone who's already overwhelmed, and you're feeling like, "So what are you gonna do? How are you gonna
Mhm.
approach this?" Those
Mhm. Mhm.
questions.
Mhm. Huh. Huh. Interesting. For some reason, my mind flipped back to your work as an EM physician. Like, how does, I mean, I don't know, there's something about that. There's a connection point there that I think is, in a way, it's a little bit similar.
I think the best physicians in any specialty,
Yeah.
the best professionals, the best people are working with teams, and that
Yeah.
means that they're developing
Yeah.
these shared perspectives,
Right.
and so,
Right.
I think I'm probably at my best when I'm taking care of patients, when I'm seeing EMS and the patients walking and I'm not with them. I'm just seeing what's going on. I'm asking EMS what they think. I'm asking the nurse what they think. I'm asking the
Uh-huh.
patient, oh, there's a family member in there,
Uh-huh.
keeping
Uh-huh.
track of all this sort of stuff. And
Uh-huh.
that comes from really developing this kind of shared perspective of what's going on
Right.
and then
Right.
moving forward in that way. So I think it fits there.
It might be a natural fit. I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about, as we bring it back to the individual leader level. One of the things, obviously, that you talk a lot about in the book, and I've seen you speak about, are things like the power of emotional intelligence, developing that muscle, relational skills. But from your perspective,
Yeah.
if you have clinicians or clinician leaders out there that have a higher level of relational ability, have a higher level of
Right.
emotional intelligence, what's the difference between them and maybe others that don't in terms of how it shows up in team performance and patient outcomes?
Yeah. Let's just go like from the person who's really good at facilitating, like bringing people
Okay.
together. We might
Yeah.
say that they have really high emotional intelligence, maybe. I don't know, because like they're very deeply empathetic and understanding, and they want to hear what's going on and those sorts
Mm-hmm.
of things. And
Mm-hmm.
and so that can be very good. And so that as you do a 360 or as you look at an all staff like engagement survey, do I feel like I'm heard? Yes, I feel like I'm being heard. That's good. On the
Right.
other hand, there may be an issue there, which is, are they getting stuff done?
Right.
Right? And so it may be that they're not getting things done.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so while there may be a high empathy there, that's actually holding them back.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
if the
Can
individual
be.
who's able to get things done,
Right.
who's able to like just get results, drive results, those sorts of things, that's
Mm-hmm.
scores high.
Mm-hmm.
But then maybe they're not perceived as having that emotional intelligence,
Uh-huh.
right? And so they're not actually reaching out, and people don't feel like they're heard.
Uh-huh.
And so those sorts of dynamics go on. I mean, that
Right.
happens. I think
Right.
we all have the things. And so
Yeah.
from the leader perspective, I think that as we talk about emotional intelligence, that's great, but you also need to get stuff done,
Correct.
and from the
Yeah.
getting stuff done, you also need to figure out how to
Yeah.
meet with individuals and
Yeah.
understand them. And so
Yeah.
I just think of it as a spectrum, and then
Right.
you're looking at that, and the leaders need to be agile, and so you need to
Mm-hmm.
be all of these sorts of things, and our
They
best
do.
leaders do that. And
Right.
most people aren't all those things at once. There's some
Yeah.
natural, but I think that, and especially, I mean, you develop that.
Mhm.
It may not be natural for you, but maybe you
Yeah.
develop your team where
Yeah.
it's more natural for some of your team members.
Right.
Maybe there's some things that you can do that help you to do the
Mhm.
things that are more facilitative or
Right.
driving results. And
Right.
yeah,
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, one thing I do know is it is learnable. It is definitely a skill development. I think that it's something that they have to a lot of times evolve, and they can. And I think it is a process. I do think that there are impacts on team performance. I've seen the difference myself in the difference between leaders that run their teams with a heavy hand and say that they listen but actually don't, and say, "Oh yes, I want to hear everybody's point of view," but then do exactly what they were going to do anyway. And those kinds of things I think can really limit a team. Whereas if you've got somebody who is a little bit more inclusive, but also holds and knows the boundary to when things actually have to get done, I think that in and of itself is part of a person with higher emotional intelligence as well.
so one of the things in organizations, and one of the things I think that's very effective at Mayo, is that
Hmm.
how are leaders chosen? And so
Yes,
in some
agreed.
organizations, the leaders are
Yeah.
chosen by the department.
Uh-huh.
One of the things I like about Mayo is that the leaders are chosen by, it's actually a personnel committee that is
Uh-huh.
multidisciplinary, made up of physicians of multiple different specialties.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
they choose who the chair is for each
Okay.
of. And so what they do is they go into if it's internal medicine that's seeking a new chair, they go in and they interview people. They ask them to name some names. And then they look at how well those individuals work with people outside the department, people within the
Right.
department,
Right.
physicians,
Right.
nurses. And so they're really looking for those individuals who have a track
Mhm.
record
Yeah.
of leading in this sort of connected, not necessarily a
Mhm.
circling the wagons sort of way.
Yes, and I think that's a change from years past, I would imagine, where the person with the thickest CV is the one who got the leadership position, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so what can be one of the problems there is sometimes that can create a lot of, sometimes you pick facilitative leaders. And again,
Mhm.
you can do really good at working inside and outside, but are you actually delivering results? And so we
Right,
need to
right,
balance that.
right, right. So how hard is it to find those leaders that have that balance?
Yeah. That's,
How's it going in Mayo?
so I think it's difficult everywhere. I think we need to be developing them. And
Agreed,
yeah,
agreed.
I think this is one of these things that we're just developing. And so as you look at things
Mhm.
like leader as a coach, as
Yeah,
a model, that is a cornerstone of that sort of thing.
yeah,
How do you show up in a way that gets things done and that also
yep.
connects?
Right, right, right. Let me ask you this. One of the things I think that is a struggle, it always is that a lot of organizations espouse that they do people development. They do leadership development, but they don't truly maybe make space for it. What's something in your mind that a shift an organization would need to make to actually truly create space for this kind of leadership development that develops these kinds of leaders?
Yeah, it's weird because I feel like I have a increasingly I'm not sure I like the word even leadership development.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you like?
I like leadership effectiveness.
Mm.
I don't
Mhm.
know. So, and this is still messy, but because I think that development is a part of becoming effective. But
Yes, agreed.
development can be too. It can be viewed as, oh, we have these course offerings. Look at there's this
Yes.
online university. We're going to have them do this thing, which is a core competency thing,
Yeah.
and look at they pass that. Can they actually demonstrate it?
Yeah.
I think
Exactly.
that's the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
And so I think what we want to be doing is making sure that yes, we are developing individuals, but that turns into effectiveness.
Agreed.
And so
Yes.
how are we doing that? And I think
Yeah.
there's a bit of a we have a module for this.
Mhm.
Great, but I want to actually see
Mhm.
some improvements here.
Absolutely. I think it's so important, any development effort, and I'll use the word development effort, but really the end goal should be the embedding of these new behaviors because at the end of the day, it's all about behavior change. How do we get people to build the awareness, to build the understanding, to build the willingness to actually take these things and run with them and try them and persevere and keep going, even if it doesn't work the first time, just try it again in different circumstances and be kind to themselves in the process because it's all part of it. I always say in my courses, it's progress, not perfection. Because too often I think clinicians, but physicians in particular, go in and just expect they're going to be able to do this stuff perfectly. I'm going to hear it. I'm going to learn psychological safety. All right, good. I got it. I'm
Right.
going to go and I'm going to build it on my team. It's going to be great. So helping them understand that it's a process. But to your point, it has to be embedded in behavior in the organization.
And I'm a fan of Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy and adult levels of
Mhm.
development and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I think about that too as we're thinking about
Tell
an
me.
organization developing individuals. You can look at individuals at the same age and the same specialty, even maybe in the
Mhm.
same position, but they may have different ways that they're making sense of this complex world. And so some
Right.
individuals
Right.
there are reaching out to their colleagues to try to decide what to think. I mean, they're still in this sort
Mhm.
of socialized kind of external compass framework.
Mhm.
Some individuals are more self-authored and they're able to take these different ideas and like kind of author their own. Some
Right.
individuals are able to step above and kind of
Right.
think without their ego intertwined with that.
Mm.
And so it's really difficult in an organization to be developing people because what you'd want to be doing is developing them where they're at.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same, I can present, teach, have kind of activities
Mhm.
within the same content, but
Mhm.
that same content at different times will land differently for people.
Mhm. Yep.
And
Mhm.
so it's kind of nice in some ways because I can present something to the senior leaders that
Right.
can be the same thing I'm presenting to
Yep.
middle leaders,
Yep.
but they're going to see it in different ways. And so we want to
Mhm.
be, I think, not only developing people for their core competencies for the organization, for their role, but geez, wouldn't it be great if we can figure out how to do it for that individual where they're at?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the conversation always changes depending on who's in the room. So
Yeah.
like you say, you can be presenting something very, very similar, but the conversation would be entirely different, the discussion around it and how to apply it and
Yep.
what it means,
Yep.
right? Well, so let's talk just a little bit more about this whole leaders coach idea.
Yeah.
I think from what I've understood from you is that you really do believe that this idea of being able to act with a coaching mindset, it's not really just a nice to have anymore, but it is a core leadership competency. And why do you think that's true now?
Oh, I think it's probably always been true, to be
Yeah.
honest. I think we're getting, and let's just go back to like when I trained as a coach, like dream
Yeah.
catchers and feelings, right? And as a coach.
Yes.
And at that time, then in healthcare, maybe as you started talking about coaching, this was because you're a leader who's having issues. It's for disruptive
Mhm.
individuals, right?
Right, right,
And
right.
so we've had to spend a lot of time on what is a coach, and to get to the
Mhm.
point where we're starting to think actually of coaching not as being for problems, but actually being a way of developing individuals.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
now that I think we're in a place now where many organizations are comfortable that we have senior leaders. Let's get them coaches. We
Yep.
need to be having this kind of coaching
Yeah.
culture, and we see this as
Yeah.
a positive thing.
Right.
And so what we're seeing is as we're developing the label and understanding, it's moving things forward. So I think in some
Right.
ways, that's where we're at. And then as we have a name for it, like one of the things I talk about one of my courses is I ask people about what burnout is, and they know what burnout is, and then I ask them to
Yeah.
name well-being. Just like six, I say, just name six parts of psychological well-being,
Mhm.
and no one can. No one can. I mean, these are physicians. And the joke is like when I was a baby or, young kid, I went to my mom and I was like, my tummy hurts. And she's like, oh, go to school. I was like, okay. But now that I'm a doctor, I'm like, I think there's something going on with my spleen, or maybe it's my gastric antrum. Like I have a word for that.
Right.
And
Right.
so as we develop the word for the different parts of well-being, alignment with the purpose, autonomy,
Mm. Yeah.
personal growth, like those sorts of things, now we
Yes.
can do things.
Yeah.
But so as we talk within an organization about coaching and what that
Yeah.
is and
Yeah.
facilitating, and now
Yeah.
one of the things I talk about in the book is the different hats that we wear as leader.
Yes. Yeah.
And so supervisor and coach and
Yep.
mentor and
Right.
teacher,
Right.
like these are all, and so then we understand that we can actually approach the same conversation wearing multiple hats. And then with
Mhm.
each of these hats, there's different approaches.
Right.
It just improves our effectiveness because
Yes,
we
it
have,
does.
oh, okay, I need to be a supervisor a little bit. Okay, I've supervised too much. Let me step back. I think there's a
Right.
gap in learning. Let me teach. Okay, let me
Right.
coach because I want to figure
Yeah.
out how they're like processing this. So it's developing the language, developing the tactics. I think that's where we're
Yeah.
at.
Totally. I understand that. Firstly, I agree with you entirely that coaching was always thought of as a very remedial thing, right? Oh, that guy's disruptive needs coaching. Gonna give him a coach, a lot of fun kind of coaching. Coaching high performers, and I love that that transition has happened. It's been a while, but it has, and I agree with you on that one. In that adaptability between all those hats that you're talking about, where do you think physicians in particular would get stuck in being able to be facile and how they move through those?
Yeah, I
Is
think
it
it's very individual, to
Yeah.
be honest.
Do
It's
you?
very individual. Yeah. It just
Yeah.
depends on the individual. And
Mhm.
there's probably some themes within some specialties because
Yeah.
some specialties, I find a medicine physician is probably going to be different than a neurosurgeon. An
Mhm.
emergency
Mhm.
physician is going to be different
Potentially, yeah.
than
Mhm.
maybe a radiologist or a
Mhm.
dermatologist. I mean,
Mhm.
and so there's some kind of archetypes, but within every specialty, there are
Right.
individuals who are different. And so I
That's
think
true.
it just depends
Yeah.
on that.
So it's really just helping them build the awareness of those different roles and
Yeah.
then what their role is within those, and then being able to identify the circumstances within which hat they need to put on in the moment. And then just the ability to keep switching hats continually, I think is part of the adaptability that they build over time.
Yep.
And that's part of the progress, not perfection, because I think for a lot of them, they feel like they have to have this down right away. As soon as they hear about it, they've got to be perfect at it because that's kind of what clinicians do.
And for some of these
Yeah.
skills, you learn how to coach, and then you
Yeah.
start coaching your colleague, and they're like, "What's up with you? Like, this is
Yeah.
not how we talk." It's like, "What are you doing
Yeah.
asking questions? I
Uh,
just want you to know this is what we do. I complain, and then you complain, and then I complain, and you
yeah.
complain. You're asking me now what I think and
Yeah.
how I would approach things
Yeah.
differently." So there's a little bit of that too, like a change
Yeah.
in just the interactions that we have, the way we're running our meetings. And so
Yeah.
you're right, it is a progression.
Yes. Very much so. Yeah. Yeah. All of these things you're bringing up, I have heard exactly those things come up in these rooms where I teach. It's just so funny. It's so common. So Let me ask you a question too then, because we know that coaching is important and spending time and being able to shift into it and to have the mindset around coaching and not just parachuting in and fixing everything. And leaders, I think for the most part will see, okay, yeah, it makes sense. It's good to do this, but I just don't have time. Sorry. What would you say to them in that regard?
I'd want to understand what they mean when they say that they don't have time. And yeah, so what is it about? Like, what is it? Yeah. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think that we know that
Uh-huh.
you can be very directive and feel
Uh-huh.
like you're saving time because you're just coming up with do you really want me to ask other people? Like, and they're just going to complain. Is that what you want me to do? Is this just going to waste time? Like, and it's valid because
Uh-huh.
it can be that way if we're approaching, okay, so now I'm going to go around the room and ask people what they think. They're going to bring up these things or these
Right.
fears I don't know how to deal with. And
Right.
so I think that if you're not developing the skills, then that's right. You're going to be
No.
wasting your time. And so
Right.
it's a little bit understanding that kind of some of the tactics and the frameworks and the ways
Uh-huh.
that it helps
Uh-huh.
you think differently, helps your group to think differently, and
Right.
that it doesn't have to mean that you're going to have a retreat. It may mean that you're just, how do you have this 15-minute discussion in the
Yeah.
meeting, maybe in a different way,
Yeah.
and then you just apply that, see how it goes. You're dipping your toes in the water,
That's
and
right.
yeah,
Yeah. And as it goes, right? I know we've taught people to be able to use that grow model in a 5-minute hallway conversation,
right,
to kind of help facilitate that person getting
right.
to something they can walk away with. So if they say I don't have time, you help them understand how the tools can help them make better use of the time that they have.
Yeah, I mean,
That
there's kind
right?
of two things that pop into my head. So one is you don't have to
Yeah.
change if you want to stay the same, right? This is like
Yeah.
the coaching thing,
Yeah.
right? You don't have,
Yeah.
okay, I mean, yeah. And so, and so then for that individual, I'm just wondering, how is the status quo working out for you?
Yeah, exactly. How's that working for you?
How's it working for you? And generally, there's going to be some things that are not working. And so now we're like, so then how can we change things? And then the
Right.
other thing is that change occurs like one step at a time, not by giant
Yeah.
leaps. And
Yeah.
so brick
Yeah.
by brick,
Brick by
it's
brick.
bird by
Yeah.
bird from Anne Lamott, like that's how
Yeah.
we just do things.
Yeah, yeah, helping people see that it's okay to do it that way. If you had to pick just one coaching habit, what's one habit that leaders could pick up that would be the one that makes the biggest difference, do you think?
I
Yeah.
think the first move is the move from expert, from knowing
Okay.
to understanding that you
Yep.
don't know. It's recognizing that there
Mhm.
are complicated things where my expertise is very helpful, and I can
Yeah,
go in and I can write an order. But
right.
then actually recognizing that in the leadership case, that wait, have this thought, like it came to your mind, what should they're wrong or they're right, but then be able to step back and say, huh,
Yeah,
let me ask a little bit more. Like, what are their perspectives?
right.
Just that, moving from
Yeah,
expert to
yeah,
coach, facilitator,
yeah,
that's the first step.
right. One of your concepts I love is the dance floor, and it's
Oh,
and I've taught that. I've stolen it, sorry. I've
yeah.
taught that
I
at
stole it too.
work.
That's
Oh,
Heifetz, so that's
oh,
good. But
good.
yes, yes,
I feel better.
I
Oh,
borrowed
God.
it, I should say.
Exactly, I do credit you, but I love that because I use the results pyramid where we talk about experiences and beliefs and how that forms actions and then into results, right?
Yeah,
We can put that pause between our experiences and our beliefs before we take action.
yeah,
Same kind of thing where we just create that space for response
yep,
instead of reaction, right? I think it fits exactly with what you're talking about. That moment where you just think, do I have to respond with my opinion right now? And
right.
can I take a step back just for a moment and ask a question instead? Yeah.
And just going back to as an emergency physician,
Yeah.
like it's helpful there. I mean, I think a lot of people think of emergency physicians as someone comes in and then you do something. The best care I can provide oftentimes is just stepping back a little bit, looking at the room.
Yeah.
Patient comes in, do they need a breathing tube or not? You have some people who like just, yes, but just
Mhm.
being able to step back and just think about it. And oftentimes just that little pause, you see things in a different way. And so it
Yeah.
works. When
Yeah.
when I'm with my daughters and there's this problem and I'm like, I know what to do. Here's what you
Yeah.
should wait. No, step back a little bit and then like, okay,
Yeah.
what are you thinking? Like, what's going
Yeah.
on? It's like just
Yeah.
that's a habit. That's
Yeah.
something to build.
Yeah, it is. It's a habit. It's a skill. It's an intentional act that people just have to start to learn how to build in. And what I always say to them too is even if you just start to notice when you don't do it,
Yeah.
that's progress,
Right.
right?
Right.
When you catch yourself, really screwing it up, that's
Yeah.
progress.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I agree. I love that concept. So, I'm going to just ask you a couple more things in closing. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I always like to ask people if you could go back to the very beginning of your experience in training in any of this, what would be the most important thing that you'd want to tell your younger self?
Yeah. I think we all want to do a really good job.
Yeah.
And there's just been so many times I've beaten myself up,
Yeah.
really thinking about, geez, why did I say that? Or why didn't I say it this way? Or wouldn't all those sorts of things, and recognizing that there is a part of this that I own and the way I'm saying things. But oftentimes it's because the situation was set up against you.
Hmm.
And so to recognize that, I think, can be very helpful.
Okay.
I love that concept of the CEO and Seth Godin.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of like the world's worst boss
Yeah.
is that person in your own head that's talking
Mhm.
to you about you.
Yeah.
If you were that way with anyone else.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so I think we all have a bit of that. This, like, we want to
Oh,
be better,
yes.
we want to be improving, and it's really helpful to be introspective. But sometimes we're introspective in a way that it hurts ourselves, and we're not taking into consideration we're in also a situation, and there's
Yeah.
things that we can't control, and sometimes we
Right.
step back, and sometimes it
Right.
has nothing to do with us.
Right. Right. Very true. Yeah. I think we should all take that lesson. Okay. Last question. So what gives you the most hope about where things are going?
I think it's just people being human, honestly.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I think that's it. It's this, like,
Yeah.
glimmer that we all have of wanting to
Yeah.
be ourselves, help others,
Yeah.
um, take care of our community.
Yeah.
That's where the hope comes from. It's
Yeah.
just that, and
Yeah.
so for me as a physician, take care of one patient at a time.
Uh-huh.
Very helpful. As I
Uh-huh.
step into a leadership role, being able to take care of communities of patients, and as
Yeah.
you move up,
Yeah.
your ability to take care of a population.
Uh-huh.
And then as you become a good leader, as you become a
Mhm.
good coach, your ability, the effect that you have
Yeah.
on your community, on the world, like, this is
Yeah.
rippling sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. That is exciting. And do you see a positive role for yourself in that process as a
Well,
coach of
hopefully,
theirs? Come on.
hopefully. I mean, I don't, I do the things that are interesting to me.
Yeah.
That's my focus. And so, and that's, you can see my job. I have finance and emergency medicine and coaching and
Yeah.
developing leaders and
Yeah.
all that sorts of stuff. It's following
Yeah.
interests. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the good news that I think anyway is that I think people are more willing to talk about this kind of stuff now
Mm.
from this perspective. I see more openness and more willingness for people to, the perspective taking around this. Do you see that more than 10 years ago?
Yeah. I mean, there's huge demand for these things that
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Yeah.
The question is for organizations is how to do this and how to scale it and
Yes.
how it can be affordable. And
Yes.
so there's answers to all those questions.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, Richard, thank you so much. I really appreciate the conversation. I appreciate your candor and your honesty and your words. And I appreciate you being here with me today.
All right. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. What I appreciate so much about Richard's perspective is how normalizing it is. He doesn't pretend that leadership is easy or that clinicians should magically know how to do it without support. He names the truth, that leadership can be isolating. The shift away from being the expert can feel destabilizing, and the work is deeply human. And at the same time, he offers frameworks that make it doable, especially his emphasis on facilitation, coaching, and building shared reality before rushing into solutions. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone carrying a little too much pressure to have all the answers. And if you haven't checked out his book, You're the Leader, Now What?, it's absolutely worth grabbing, especially if you want practical tools that you can apply at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. So thanks for being here, everyone. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Lead Well MD is produced by Ashley Wendel and Physician Leader Group. Get new episodes as soon as they're published by following Lead Well MD on your favorite podcast app. And don't forget to share with your colleagues and spread the word.